guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, my name is Charity and you're watching BookedonCharity. Welcome to my winter wrap-up. I have not done a wrap-up in 4 months. The last one I did was actually in April. I'm skipping May because it does not fit with the theme of today's video. So we're gonna keep it to the months of June, July, and August. And I have read a total of 20 books in winter. Let's get into it. Before I give you all the information, let me just explain to you how I'm gonna do this. So I'm gonna take it month for month, and I'm first gonna give you the stats of the books that I read, as well as which books I read and the star rating. I don't know if I'll remember what happened in all of these books that I read, but I will give you whatever thoughts I have about them and whatever I felt about the book. So with that said, let's start with the month of June. So in June, I read a total of 9 books, and the total number of pages I read in June was 2,362 pages. By the way, I'm getting all of this information from my story graph. I will link my profile down below so that you can give me a follow if you'd like to. 8 of the books I read were fiction, while only 1 of them were non-fiction. In terms of genres, 4 of them were fantasy books, 3 of them were science fiction, 3 of them were comics, which are the ones that were science fiction. 2 of the books were LGBTQIA+ genre, 2 of them were thrillers, 2 of them were mysteries. I had 1 middle grade, 1 young adult, 1 memoir, and 1 contemporary book. I listened to 30.83 hours of audiobooks in the month of June. In terms of format, 3 of the books I read were physical, 3 were ebooks, and the other 3 were audiobooks. I think June was a really good reading month. My average star rating was 4.22, which I think is pretty good. So now let's get into the actual books that I read for the month of June. The first book that I read in June was The Paris Apartment, and this is by Lucy Foley, and I gave this book a 3 stars. The writing style of this book, I think it was very easy to read. However, we follow a lot of different characters, and I did listen to this in audiobook. I wasn't very confused. However, it was hard for me to grasp who is who because we kept changing between so many different characters, and the story was actually really slow, and I didn't really enjoy the plot twist of the story. So I thought it was just okay. So The Paris Apartment follows a lot of people, but mainly we follow this young girl who came to visit her half-brother. I believe he's the half-brother in Paris, and she was talking to him that she'll come and visit, but then when she got there, he was not there, and later I found out that the brother disappeared and nobody seems to know what's happened to him or where he is, and nobody seems to care. So she's going around doing investigating basically what happened to the brother. I think it was okay. It wasn't the best. The next book I read in the month of June was Dear Centurion, a Black Spirit memoir by Akweke Imezi. I gave this book a 5 star. This, as I said, is a memoir, and it's written in the form of letters to people who were close to the author. It deals with a lot of trauma, there's a lot of suicidal talks in here, there's depression talks, mental illness. There's a lot going on in here, and it is very graphic, which can be quite disturbing. However, I think I kind of skimmed through all of that because I was so taken by the writing of the book and the way that it was done that I absolutely loved. I kind of shut myself out of everything else that happened in the book. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite books that are written by the author, but it's not entertaining. It's not an entertaining book, but it's written really well. The next book I read was The Golden Couple. I read this on audio. I gave this book 4.5 stars. This was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. In this story, we follow 2 main perspectives. Avery, which is a very unconventional therapist, as well as Marissa, who is a wife to Matthew. So in the story, we follow Avery, who is a therapist who lost their license because they did something, and the thing that they did is actually coming back to haunt them. But after doing all that, they decided to actually keep helping people, but doing it in a very unconventional way, in a 10-step program to basically get your life together. And whereas most therapists will try to guide you to figure out how to solve whatever issue you're coming to them with, she will actually tell you what to do. She will visit your home, she will invade your space, she will spy on you, just so that she can gather enough information to be able to assist you in whatever you need assisting. Marissa is the one who actually contacted Avery to assist her with her marriage because there's an infidelity in the marriage. She cheated on her husband, and she goes to Avery with the husband to go and admit to cheating on the husband, and we following the story while they're trying to work this out. But there's a lot more sinister things happening in this marriage, and people are lying, and the plot twist was really good. I really enjoyed it. I actually reread this book recently and I had the best time. The next book I read was Counterfeit, which I gave 4 stars. In this book we follow in the beginning it feels like we follow one main character, but then halfway through the book we switch to another main character. This book is told from an interview perspective where this woman is talking about how they got into the business of selling counterfeit bags and talking about how they got caught. But this book is written really well. It is very entertaining. Halfway through the book it gets even more entertaining. The twist of it is really good. I really had a lovely time reading this book. I would definitely recommend it. The next book I read was Blood to Poison by Mary Watson. I give this book a 4-star. It follows an 18-year-old, I believe, or 17-year-old girl named Savannah who believes that she's cursed, and she actually truly is. She's an ancestor of this woman who was a slave, and she was beaten and raped as a slave, and one day she decided, I've had enough. She ran away from her master's house, but in doing so she burned the house. She cursed this man to, you know, have his kids and his children's children like be cursed for life. But she didn't know that she was pregnant at the time that she was casting this curse, and therefore this curse also affects her family. So this is a coming of age story. It's a story where this young girl is figuring out her magic. It is based in South Africa, in Cape Town. I had a good time reading it. There was a lot of things that I felt I could relate to, and it's one of those few books where they would describe a place and I'm like, I know exactly where that is. So I had a really good time with this one, and I would recommend it for people starting out in fantasy. The magic system is very easy to follow. It's mostly just witchery, and that's it. It's not very complicated. The next book I read was a middle grade, and it was The Violet Veil Mysteries, and that was book 1, A Case of Grave Danger. I gave this one a 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite middle grade, but it was still okay. We follow Violet, who lives in they live in a mortuary. They live, the father is an undertaker, so they live where the business is essentially. And one day this kid comes in dead with a head injury, and a day later they figure out that he wasn't actually dead. He was very concussed. So she's going on this journey where she's trying to figure out what happened to this kid with his help, but he doesn't remember anything. So we're trying to actually get him to remember as well, while at the same time trying to free his father, because then he was arrested for allegedly almost murdering this kid and 4 other people. It was nice. It wasn't the most enjoyable middle grade I've ever read, but it was okay. I still had fun with it. The next book I read, or the next 3 books I read, were all graphic novels, and that was Saga volumes 2, 3, and 4. I gave volume 2 4.5 stars, and I gave volume 3 and 4 5 stars each. This series is by Brian K. Vaughan with Fiona Staples, who is the illustrator. First of all, Fiona, you've done a very, very good job at illustrating this book. It is a wonder to look at. It is done so well, even though it's so graphic and so gory, but it's beautiful. The way that it was done is beautiful. The writing was, it's really, really good. It's very humorous, it's entertaining, it's very fast paced, it's action based, like this, a lot of social commentary as well, which I absolutely loved. And did I say it's funny? It's really funny. So we follow this couple who are from opposing planets. One is actually from a moon, but let's just say planets, opposing planets, where they've been at war with each other for many, many years. And the woman was actually a guard at the place that the husband was arrested in. So she freed him and they ran away together, and obviously they got married and they have a baby, and the whole galaxy essentially believes that this baby is an abomination, so they're hunting them down. So it's a story of them trying to keep the family together, keep them safe, and everything that they're going through. It is brilliant. I really, really enjoyed reading this series. I'm not yet done. I'm now on volume 8, and I can't wait to continue with it and collect the physical copy, because I only have 1 copy, and which is volume 1. I'm struggling to actually find the rest of the volumes. If you know where I can find them locally, please let me know down below, because I am absolutely struggling. And that is all the books that I read in the month of June. Moving on to July. In July, I read 3 books, and I read a total of 1,139 pages. All of the books I read were fiction. 2 of them were fantasy. One was a dystopian, one was an LGBTQIA+ representation. The other one was science fiction. I had 1 romance, 1 contemporary. Obviously, these numbers sound like it's more than 3 books, but then some books will have more than 1 genre that they fall under. 2 of the books I read were physical copies, and 1 was a digital copy. My average star rating for the month was 4.67, which was actually a very, very good month in terms of quality of reading, and in terms of quantity it wasn't so great, but it's okay, we're still reading. So getting into the books that I actually read, the first book that I finished in July is The 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin, which is the reason why I only read 3 books in the month, because it took me literally 3 weeks to read this book. I gave this book a 4.75 star rating. I thought that it was absolutely brilliant. So firstly, the writing style is not the easiest to read. I will be honest with you. We're following 3 main characters, or 3 perspectives, let me say. We're following 3 perspectives. One of them is a young character, so when we get to that character, you can see that the writing really represents a younger person. And when we get to the older character, the story is told from 2nd person, where you're reading as I am walking wherever, I am doing this. And then the 3rd character, also the writing style is a bit different. The chapters are very long, which made it hard to finish the books. To finish the book fast, but the magic system is very intricate. So this is not a book for first time fantasy readers. You need experience. You need a bit of experience with this one, but the magic system was really, really good. It's like science fiction fantasy book all together. I found it so interesting, which made me keep reading. It has a very big glossary at the back of the book, which also contributes to making the book kind of like take long to read, because there's a lot of things that the author will talk about that I would refer back into the glossary, and then when you read that paragraph you realize, oops, there's something else I don't understand here, and then you go check for that. So it was a lot of back and forth, but like I said, the magic system is a thing that kept me going for the most part of, you know, the beginning of the book. And then when we get somewhere in the middle and you're starting to see these character developments, it's very, very character based, these character developments, and you are trying to figure out how are these characters going to come together, because you know in your mind that they need to at some point come together. And when they do, and when we get our plot twist, it is so good. It is so good, but you need to have been taking note and paying attention in the first part of the book in order to grasp what happened at the end of the book. I absolutely love this book. I cannot wait to get into the next one. I'm really excited. It was the first book that I read from N.K. Jemisin, and I can already feel like she's gonna be one of my favorite authors to read from. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading The Obelisk Gate, which I believe is book 2, that I need to get for myself very, very soon. The other book I read was Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola, which is a brand new release from the author. It is a romance book. It's a new adult romance book. It's taking place in a university. It gave me very Dear White People vibes, which I absolutely adored. Malachi is the best fantasy boyfriend I've ever read. The book is not very smutty, but there's so much chemistry that you just like, why aren't romance writers writing this? We literally get smart towards the end of the book, but the whole time you're so engrossed in the book and in this people's relationship, and the character development was really good. The culture dynamics were really good. I loved the audiobook because I did listen to the audiobook as well, and the narrator was doing such a great job at all the different characters' accents. I absolutely love this book. I gave it 4.75 stars, only because romance authors do this thing at the end of a romance book where they make the characters break up after they've come together, and for me it's like it was so unnecessary. I was so happy when they finally got together. Let's finish the book and end it there. But the way that they got back together was also done really well. I think the writing style, the writing was beautiful. The writing was really beautiful. I love this. Is my favorite. This is my favorite romance I've read this year. Granted, I don't read a lot of romance books, but this is my most. It was beautiful. And the last book I read in July was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, and this book, we follow this man who dies, and he goes to kind of like an in-between between living and the dead, or the afterlife. And we see him struggling to come to terms with his death, and we're going through a journey where he's basically reflecting back on his life and trying to grapple with the fact that, okay, I'm no longer alive, but I'm still technically alive, so how do I make the best of what we have? And it's there's a found family trope in this book which I think was really beautiful, and there's a romance in here which I think was beautiful, and it was nice, it was cozy. It wasn't the House in the Cerulean Sea vibes, but I had a good time with it, and I gave it a 4-star rating. And finally, for my August reads, I read a total of 8 books in August with a total of 2,206 pages. 3 of the books I read had LGBTQIA+ representation. 3 of them were science fiction, 3 of them were fantasies, 3 of them were comic books, 2 of them were thrillers, 2 of them were mysteries. I got 2 contemporaries, 1 romance, and 1 literary fiction. 4 of the books I read were physical books, the other 4 were digital copies. My average star rating for the month was 4.13 stars. I think I did pretty well. Actually, my winter reads was actually really good. The first book I read in August was Behold the Dreamers by Mbolombwe. I gave this one 5 stars. This book was so good. It was so good. It was so funny and entertaining and wholesome, but real at the same time. So we follow this man who moved to the United States, and he is an illegal immigrant essentially because his visa has run out, but he's still in the country and he's looking for a job. He gets his job as a chauffeur. He gets his wife and his kid to come to America, and they're yearning for the American dream essentially. And we see them as they trying to get that American dream. We see them as they are having these struggles with the with reaching that dream. As at the same time, we're getting a glimpse into the American immigration system. So I really enjoyed this book. I think it was so funny. I think it was so real, especially the conversations between the main character and his cousin. It was absolutely ridiculously funny. I also listened to the audiobook of this one as I was reading the physical book as well, and the narrator did an amazing job with all the accents, and there was music as well in the background. It was beautiful. The next book I read was Lost to Vanish by Megan Miranda. I gave this one 2.5 stars because it wasn't the best. It is a mystery book, and for the most part I couldn't tell where the story was going. I was struggling to keep up who is who in the book. I wasn't feeling very intrigued by the book. I wasn't interested in the plot twist in the end, and yeah, it wasn't my best read. I didn't like it. The next books I read was Saga Volumes 5, 6, and 7, which were on ebook as well. I've been using SCRIBD to read these ebooks. You can find my link down below, which will give you access to 60 free days of SCRIBD, and when you sign up and get those 60 days, I get 30 days free to use SCRIBD. Volume 5 I gave 4 stars. Volume 6 I gave it 5 stars. Volume 7 I also gave 5 stars. I absolutely love the series, you guys. I can't keep talking about it. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a comic, so there's not much I can tell you about the book without spoiling it, but I did earlier mention kind of like a broad synopsis of what the book is about. But if you're into graphic novels, if you're into science fiction, if you're into social commentary, please do yourself a favor and read this book. If you're in South Africa, I'm struggling to find the copies, so I'm using SCRIBD to read the ebooks. If you are from any country outside of Africa, I think it might be a little bit easier to get this book. I only found volume 1 on Takealot. Volume 2 has been out of stock on Takealot for months. I know that Amazon definitely has stock of these books. I just haven't gotten them yet. The next book I read was You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Kweke Emezi, which I gave 2.75 stars, and I talk extensively about how I did not like this book or the characters or anything that was happening in my previous vlog. I will link it in the cards. The next book I read was The Silent Patient, and this is by Alex Michaelides. I absolutely love this book. This is a psychological mystery about a woman who allegedly killed her husband, tried to kill herself, and then decided not to talk for years. So we've got this psychotherapist who has taken on her case and wants to figure out why this woman is no longer talking, what the deal is, and how to get her to talk again so she can talk about what happened, and we can put this to bed. But it was so good. It was written so well. I was intrigued the whole time. I was trying to figure out the mystery myself, but I couldn't figure it out. But when it happened, when the plot twist came, I thought it was done so beautifully. It was brilliant. This is a book that I would definitely reread one day because it was so good. The final book I read in August was Anonymous Sex, and this is by 27 authors it's a short story collection essentially, but you don't know which author wrote which story. It's all stories about erotica. I gave this book a 3.75 stars. there were some stories that were very memorable, there's some that were very forgettable, but my favorite stories were the last story, because I feel like there was more history behind it, there was more chemistry behind it, there was even the writing, the way it was done. I think it was brilliant, because we follow this couple who we see them at old age, and then we slowly going back in time to see how their relationship evolved and formed. But we're hearing the story from the wife's perspective, and we get her sexual experiences throughout her life. The second book that was interesting to me was Asphodel, which I cannot even explain it because I don't know what happened, but it lives in my mind rent free, and I keep thinking about it, which is why I'm talking about it now. But yeah, that's all the books that I read for June, July, and August. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to click that like button down below, subscribe to my channel, and let me know if you read any of these books and what your feelings were, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.